At my ex's engagement party, he found out I was rich, and suddenly he wanted me back. The night Jason broke up with me, it was raining. Not a gentle, romantic drizzle, but a hostile downpour that turned the city into a blurry mess of neon reflections and car horns. Fitting weather for what was about to become the worst night of my life. I remember walking into our apartment. Soaking wet from the 3-block sprint from the bus stop after my second job had kept me late again. My hair was plastered to my face, makeup long gone, and my cheap polyester work clothes clung uncomfortably to my skin. I looked like a drowned rat, and I knew it. What I didn't know was that Jason had been waiting for precisely this moment. Perfect timing, he said from our small living room, where he sat on our second-hand couch, scrolling through his phone. His tone was cold, detached. Not even looking up at me. "We need to talk, Ellie." Those 4 words. The universal prelude to devastation. I dropped my soggy purse on the floor, water pooling around my feet. "Can I at least change first? I'm freezing. This won't take long." He finally looked up, his face set in that expression I'd grown to dread, a mixture of pity and irritation, like I was a problem he'd been forced to deal with. My heart started racing. "What's going on?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. "I can't do this anymore." He gestured vaguely around our apartment, at the stack of unpaid bills on the counter, at my textbooks from night school, at my laptop where I'd been working on business plans until 3 a.m. for weeks. This struggle. You're working 2 dead-end jobs. You're exhausted all the time. You're chasing some fantasy startup dream that's going nowhere. Each word landed like a slap. "My app idea is solid," I said, my voice small. "I just need more time." "Time?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ellie, I've given you time. 3 years of it. And what's changed? You're still living paycheck to paycheck. Still talking about potential and vision while we can barely make rent." "We're just getting started," I protested, feeling my clothes grow cold against my skin. "Everyone struggles at first." "Not everyone," he cut in. "Some people know how to succeed. Some people have what it takes." He stood up, and I noticed for the first time the suitcase by the door. "And some people are just burdens." The word hung in the air between us. Burden. "Is this about Voltix?" I asked. Voltix Innovations was the financial tech company he'd been desperate to work for since graduation, the one that had rejected him twice already. "Did they offer you the job?" A flash of something anger? Embarrassment crossed his face. "This isn't about any job. This is about us. About compatibility. About wanting different things." "Different things?" I echoed. "Jason, we've talked about the same dreams for years. Building something together, making a difference."
"No, Ellie."
"Those were your dreams. I just went along with them, because..." He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Because what?" I pressed, a sick feeling growing in my stomach. "Because I thought you'd grow up eventually. I thought you'd realize these fantasies about changing the world with some app were just that, fantasies. But you're stuck. You'll never be successful. Not like this." I stood there, dripping water onto our floor, feeling each word like a physical blow. The casual cruelty of it. The dismissal of everything I'd been working for. Of me. "When are you leaving?" I managed to ask, my voice steadier than I felt.
"Tonight."
"I've found a place, closer to downtown, where all the high-end financial firms were, where people like me couldn't afford to live. And were you planning to help with next month's rent?" I asked. "Since the lease is in both our names." He had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "I can cover half of next month. After that, you'll need to figure something out." He checked his watch, the expensive one his parents had given him for graduation. "Maybe downsize. Or get a roommate."
Just like that.
3 years together, and he was walking away, leaving me to figure something out while he moved on to better prospects, better neighborhoods, better people. "So that's it," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "You're just done with me?" Jason sighed, like my question was an inconvenience. "Look, we both knew this was coming. We want different things. I'm headed somewhere and you're..." He gestured at my soaking wet form. You're not. He moved to the door, grabbing his suitcase, already packed, I realized. Had been for days, probably. He'd been planning this. Jason, I said, one last attempt. We can work through this.
I just need a little more time.
The investment meeting next week could change everything. He actually laughed at that. The one with that angel investor guy who hasn't even confirmed yet? Wake up, Ellie. No one's going to invest in your little budget app. The market's saturated. You're nothing special. The words cut deep, especially because they echoed my own private fears. What if I wasn't special? What if I was just another dreamer destined to fail? I'm sorry it ended like this, he said, not sounding sorry at all. You'll be better off with someone more on your level. And then he was gone. The door closed behind him with a quiet click that somehow hurt more than if he'd slammed it. I stood frozen in my tiny apartment, water still dripping from my clothes, creating a small puddle around my feet. Through the thin walls, I could hear our neighbors arguing, the same fight they had every Thursday night. The refrigerator hummed its familiar broken tune. Outside, the rain continued to pummel the city. Everything was exactly the same as it had been 5 minutes ago, except that my entire life had just collapsed. I finally moved, peeling off my wet clothes and leaving them in a heap on the floor. In the bathroom, I caught sight of myself in the mirror, pale, hollow-eyed, looking utterly defeated. Behind me, reflected in the glass, I could see the stack of overdraft notices on the counter. The unpaid electric bill. The credit card statement I'd been afraid to open. And suddenly, something inside me shifted. Not hope, nothing so gentle. Something harder, colder. A seed of determination, watered by humiliation and fertilized by rage. I gripped the edge of the sink, staring at my reflection. I'll never forget this, I whispered. Never. I didn't know it then, but that moment, standing half-naked and wholly broken in a bathroom mirror, would be the last time I would ever allow myself to be made small by anyone, especially Jason. The week after Jason left, I lost my job at the cafe. Not because I was a bad barista, but because I showed up with red-rimmed eyes and served a $7 latte to a businessman who'd actually ordered a black coffee. When he complained, I burst into tears right there behind the counter. My manager, a kind woman named Denise, gently suggested I take some time. Time was the one thing I couldn't afford. 2 days later, my car died permanently, according to the mechanic who didn't bother hiding his amusement at my shock over the $2,700 repair estimate. I started taking the bus everywhere, adding hours to my commute to my remaining job as a virtual assistant. Rock bottom arrived exactly 3 weeks after the breakup, when I opened my mailbox to find an eviction notice. I had 30 days to pay up or get out. That night, I sat on my kitchen floor, surrounded by unpaid bills, eating cold ramen straight from the package because I couldn't afford to pay the gas bill to boil water. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Have you considered moving back home, honey? Your old room is still free. Moving back to my parents' house in rural Ohio would mean admitting defeat, confirming every dismissive thing Jason had said about me. I couldn't do it. Instead, I did something desperate. I emailed every single person I'd ever networked with about my financial app idea, former professors, LinkedIn connections I'd never met in person, even that guy from the tech meetup who'd spent the entire time mansplaining Bitcoin to me. 50 emails, each with my carefully crafted business plan attached. 49 never responded. But the 50th, Mira Chen, a fintech veteran whose TED Talk I'd watched 17 times, replied within an hour. Interesting approach to micro-investing. Your UI needs work. Coffee tomorrow, 9 a.m., Blackbird Cafe. Don't be late. I spent all night revising my UI mockups, forgetting about sleep, bills, and Jason. When I arrived at the cafe the next morning, 30 minutes early, Mira was already there, scrutinizing her laptop screen. You're Elena Harper? She asked, not looking up. Everyone calls me Ellie, I said automatically. She finally looked at me, her gaze sharp. First piece of advice. In this industry, use your full name. Elena sounds like someone who runs things. Ellie sounds like someone who fetches coffee. For the next 2 hours, Mira dissected my business plan with surgical precision. She questioned my assumptions, challenged my market analysis, and completely dismantled my revenue projections. Then she said, "I'll introduce you to some people. This has potential." Those 5 words changed everything. Over the next month, Mira became my mentor. She connected me with her network, helped me secure a tiny seed investment, $50,000, more money than I'd ever seen, and even let me crash on her couch when I finally had to leave my apartment. "Consider it an investment in your future," she said when I protested. "Just don't snore." I didn't sleep enough to snore. Instead, I worked 18, sometimes 20 hours a day, refining my app that helped people like me, broke, struggling, but determined, to build wealth from nothing. I called it Nest Egg, a financial platform that combined micro-investing with debt management tools and financial literacy education. 6 months after Jason walked out, I moved into a tiny studio apartment that doubled as Nest Egg's first office. By then, we'd expanded to a team of 3. Me, a brilliant programmer named Raj who believed in the vision enough to work for equity, and Mira, who'd officially signed on as our advisor. The first year was brutal. We lived on ramen and coffee, coding until our eyes blurred. Our first app version had bugs that made users' money seem to disappear. It didn't, but try explaining that to panicked people living paycheck to paycheck. We pivoted 4 times, ran out of money twice. I sold my laptop to make payroll and worked from a public library computer for a month. But something unexpected happened along the way. People started using Nest Egg. Not just using it, loving it. People who'd never had savings before were building emergency funds. Single parents were investing for their kids' futures. College students were managing their student loans more effectively. Our user base grew from hundreds to thousands. A tech blog wrote a small piece about us. Then TechCrunch featured us in their Startups to Watch section. 18 months after that rainy night when Jason called me a burden, I stood on a stage at a fintech conference, explaining how Nest Egg was helping the financially vulnerable build security. In the audience, venture capitalists scribbled notes. One approached me afterward. "Your company solves a real problem," he said. "We'd like to discuss series of funding." 2 weeks later, we closed a $4 million funding round. We moved to real offices, hired 15 people, expanded our services. Through it all, I remained largely behind the scenes. Mira handled most public appearances while I focused on building and expanding. Few people connected Elena Harper, the reclusive founder of Nest Egg, with that sobbing barista from 2 years ago. 3 years after the breakup, Nest Egg was valued at $75 million. We had offices in 3 cities. Our user base had crossed the million mark. One night, scrolling through LinkedIn, I saw a familiar name. Jason Morris, newly promoted to senior product manager at Voltix Innovations, the company he'd always talked about joining. He'd posted a self-congratulatory update about climbing the ladder and proving the doubters wrong. I stared at his profile picture. The same confident smile, the same carefully styled hair. He looked successful, satisfied, exactly as he'd always wanted to be. I closed my laptop and poured a glass of wine, thinking. Voltix was struggling. Everyone in the industry knew it. Their leadership was old school, resistant to the digital transformations sweeping through finance. Their stock had dropped 40% in 6 months. The next morning, I called my investment team. "I want to know everything about Voltix Innovations," I said. "Their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities, their leadership structure. Are we considering an acquisition?" my CFO asked. I smiled, remembering Jason's words from that rainy night. "You'll never be successful. You're nothing special. Let's just say I'm very interested in their future." "Voltix Innovations is ripe for disruption," said Marcus, my head of acquisitions, sliding a folder across the conference table. "Their technology is solid but outdated. Leadership is fractured. They've missed their last 2 quarterly targets." I flipped through the report, absorbing the details. Voltix had pioneered financial security protocols in the early 2010s, but had failed to adapt to mobile banking trends. Their CEO was 3 years from retirement and resistant to change. Their board was divided between old guard traditionalists and younger members pushing for modernization. And their stock? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Down 43% since January, Marcus replied. They're not in free fall yet, but the trajectory isn't good. I nodded, turning to the page that interested me most, their organizational chart. There he was, Jason Morris, Senior Product Manager, reporting directly to the VP of Product Development, the position he'd always wanted. If we were to acquire them, I said carefully, what would be our approach? Marcus raised an eyebrow. Direct acquisition would be expensive and messy. Their old guard would resist. He leaned forward. But there are other ways. We could start by acquiring smaller stakes through shell companies, gain board influence before they realize what's happening. How long would that take? 6 months minimum. Probably closer to a year. I closed the folder. I want to move faster. 3 months. Marcus looked surprised. That's aggressive. Any particular reason for the rush? I kept my face neutral. Market timing. I don't want to miss the opportunity. That wasn't a lie, just not the complete truth. The opportunity one didn't want to miss had less to do with market conditions and more to do with the satisfaction of owning the company Jason had worshipped for years, the company that had shaped his identity and fueled his ego. I'll need a team, I said. Small, discreet. People we trust absolutely. Marcus nodded. I'll put it together. But Elena, he rarely used my first name, which told me he was serious. This kind of accelerated acquisition won't be cheap. I smiled. That's not a concern. The next day, I created Artemis Ventures, a holding company named after the Greek goddess of the hunt. Through Artemis, I began acquiring small stakes in Voltix, nothing that would trigger reporting requirements, nothing that would make headlines. I moved with surgical precision. While Voltix executives were focused on their quarterly struggles, Artemis quietly purchased shares from nervous investors looking to exit. We approached board members representing significant stock options and made offers they couldn't refuse. We bought debt from creditors at discounted rates. All the while, I remained invisible. The paperwork listed Artemis Ventures as the buyer, with Elena Harper mentioned only in the fine print as CEO. Anyone looking, including Jason, would see only a faceless corporate entity, not the woman he'd once called a burden. 2 months in, we controlled 22% of Voltix. Not enough for outright control, but enough to make the board nervous. They called an emergency meeting, which I monitored through our newly appointed board representative, Mira Chin, whose reputation in fintech made her appointment seem logical rather than strategic. They're panicking, Mira reported after the meeting. The old guard wants to fight the acquisition. The younger members see it as an opportunity for fresh capital and new direction. She smiled. They're divided, which makes them weak. And Jason Morris? I asked, trying to sound casual. Has he weighed in? Mira gave me a knowing look. He's not high enough to be in these discussions. But rumor has it he's being considered for a promotion to VP of Product Strategy. Apparently, he's been taking credit for some innovations that weren't his. That sounded like the Jason I knew, climbing by standing on other shoulders. Let's accelerate, I decided. I want controlling interest by the end of the month. The final phase happened faster than even I expected. Voltix's Q3 results came in significantly below projections, sending their stock into a tailspin. Within a week, Artemis owned 38% of the company. When we offered to inject emergency capital in exchange for additional equity, the board had little choice but to accept. 76 days after I first opened that folder in my conference room, I owned 51% of Voltix Innovations. The acquisition was completed on a Tuesday afternoon. The paperwork named Artemis Ventures as the new majority stakeholder, with Elena Harper listed as CEO. I issued a brief press release announcing a period of strategic reorganization but made no personnel changes.
Not yet.
That evening, as I sat in my office reviewing the final acquisition documents, my phone rang. It was Sophie, my friend from college, one of the few people who knew both the old Ellie and the new Elena. You'll never guess who's engaged, she said without preamble.
Who?
Jason Morris. To some fitness influencer named Kira Williams. She has like 500,000 Instagram followers or something. I felt a strange twist in my stomach. Not jealousy, exactly. More like curiosity. Is that so? Yeah, they're having this ridiculously lavish engagement party next month at the Pinnacle. Very exclusive, very look how successful we are. She paused. He's been bragging about some big promotion at work, acting like he practically runs the company. I laughed softly. If only he knew who actually ran his company now. Wait, Sophie said, her voice sharpening. Isn't Voltix the company you just... Yes, I said. It is. There was a moment of silence. Then Sophie burst out laughing. Oh my God, Ellie. Does he know? Not yet. Are you going to tell him? I twirled a pen between my fingers, thinking of all those nights I'd cried myself to sleep after he left. The way he'd looked at me, like I was nothing. Worthless. A burden. I think, I said carefully, I'd rather show him. Sophie's voice turned mischievous. Well, as it happens, I'm on the guest list for this engagement party. +1. Interested. I looked at the Voltix organizational chart pinned to my wall, Jason's name circled in red. I thought about the promotion he was expecting, a promotion that would now require my approval. Absolutely, I replied. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The Pinnacle was the newest luxury hotel in the city, 68 stories of glass and steel-topped with a rooftop garden where the elite hosted their most exclusive events. As our car pulled up to the entrance, I felt a flutter of nerves, the first I'd experienced since deciding to attend. Having second thoughts? Sophie asked, adjusting her emerald cocktail dress. I smoothed the fabric of my own dress, a sleek black Valentino that cost more than my entire wardrobe from 3 years ago. Not second thoughts. Just processing the strangeness of it all. You mean the fact that you're about to walk into your ex's engagement party as his secret boss? Sophie grinned. Yeah, that's definitely a unique situation. The elevator whisked us to the rooftop, where the party was already in full swing. String lights twinkled overhead, casting a golden glow over the gathering. A live band played soft jazz in one corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. Very Instagram-worthy, Sophie murmured as we stepped into the scene. Kira's influence, no doubt. I scanned the crowd, trying to appear casual. And then I saw him. Jason stood near the center of the rooftop, one arm around a tall blonde woman wearing a white dress that seemed designed for maximum photographic impact. They were surrounded by a circle of admirers, all laughing at something Jason had just said. 3 years had changed him little. The same confident stance, the same carefully styled hair, the same habit of touching his watch when he laughed, a watch I now recognized as a Tag Heuer, probably purchased with his Voltix signing bonus. There he is, Sophie said unnecessarily. What's the plan? Dramatic confrontation? Subtle reveal? I'm here for whatever chaos you choose. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. No confrontation. Let's just mingle. The night is young. For the next hour, I did exactly that. I chatted with strangers, most of whom worked in finance or tech. I complimented the venue to the hosts, Kira's parents, who had clearly spared no expense for their daughter's engagement celebration. I stayed on the opposite side of the rooftop from Jason, watching from a distance as he worked the room. Not once did he notice me. Why would he? The timid, struggling girl he'd known had disappeared long ago. Then fate intervened in the form of Victor Schultz, Voltix's CFO, a man who'd attended several meetings with Artemis Ventures during the acquisition. Miss Harper, he exclaimed, spotting me near the bar. What a surprise. I didn't know you knew the couple. I smiled politely. I'm here with a friend. Sophie went to college with Jason. I see. Victor lowered his voice. Between us, the transition has been smoother than expected. Your team is quite efficient. I'm glad to hear it, I replied. We try to be thoughtful about acquisitions. A man standing nearby, one of Voltix's board members, I realized, turned at the word acquisitions. Are you talking about Voltix? He asked. That was brilliant strategic maneuvering, if you don't mind my saying so. The company needed new direction. Victor nodded enthusiastically. Have you met Elena Harper? She's the CEO of Artemis Ventures and the mastermind behind the acquisition. James Donovan, the man said, shaking my hand. I've been pushing for modernization for years. Your capital infusion couldn't have come at a better time. Another man joined our small circle. Did I hear Voltix mentioned? I've been following the stock since the takeover announcement. Impressive turnaround strategy. Our conversation grew, attracting more people curious about the mysterious company that had suddenly acquired a struggling but respected fintech firm. I found myself at the center of an impromptu business discussion, fielding questions about Nest Egg's approach to financial inclusion and Artemis Ventures' investment philosophy. I didn't notice Jason approaching until he was already part of the circle. The new structure is exciting, he interjected confidently, clearly eager to join any discussion about his employer. I'm heading up the product transition team. A lie. He was being considered for the role, but nothing had been finalized. James Donovan turned. Oh, Jason, just talking about your new boss. Have you met her yet? Not yet, Jason said, still not looking directly at me. But I'm sure we'll be working closely soon. My promotion announcement should be coming any day now. That's when James gestured toward me. Well, here's your chance. Jason Morris, meet Elena Harper, CEO of Artemis Ventures and Nest Egg Financial. Jason turned, smile already fixed in place, hand extended for a professional greeting. Then his eyes met mine. I watched as recognition washed over his face in waves. Confusion first, then disbelief, then the beginnings of understanding and dread. Ellie, he whispered, his hand frozen in midair. Hello, Jason, I said calmly. It's been a while. The color drained from his face as the pieces clicked into place. My new name, my title, the acquisition, his company, his future. His fiancée appeared at his side, sensing something amiss. Babe, is everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Not a ghost, I said, offering her my hand. Just an old friend. I'm Elena Harper. Kira Williams, she replied, shaking my hand while studying my face with professional interest. Have we met before? No, I said. But I know Jason from a previous life. Jason seemed to find his voice again. Ellie and I dated. In college. Another lie. We'd been together for 3 years after college, lived together, built a life that he discarded when it no longer served his ambitions. Elena, I corrected gently. Most people call me Elena now. Elena is the one who acquired Voltix, James explained to Kira. The mysterious CEO everyone's been talking about. Kira's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. Really? That's fascinating. She turned to Jason. You never mentioned you knew her. Jason's face had cycled from shocked white to embarrassed red. It was a long time ago, he managed. I smiled, raising my champagne glass slightly. To new beginnings, I said, and unexpected reunions. The group echoed the toast, unaware of the seismic shift that had just occurred between two of their members. As conversation resumed around us, Jason stared at me like I was a mathematical equation he couldn't solve. I excused myself gracefully and moved toward the edge of the rooftop garden, my heart racing despite my outward calm. Through the glass doors that led to the indoor portion of the venue, I caught my reflection, poised, elegant, powerful. A far cry from the dripping, devastated girl who'd stood in that rain-soaked apartment 3 years ago. I smiled at my reflection, knowing it was only a matter of minutes before Jason found a reason to seek me out alone. It took Jason exactly 12 minutes to find me alone. I'd positioned myself near the indoor bar, away from the main crowd. From this vantage point, I could watch him making excuses to his fiancée, disengaging from conversations, his eyes scanning the party for me while trying to appear casual. When he finally approached, he carried 2 fresh glasses of champagne, as if this were a normal reunion between old friends. You look amazing, he said, offering me one of the glasses. It's been, what, for years? 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days, I replied, accepting the champagne but not drinking it. But who's counting? He laughed nervously. Always precise. That's one thing I remember about you. I said nothing, letting the silence expand between us. Jason had always hated silence. It made him uncomfortable, compelled him to fill it with words. I wondered if that had changed. It hadn't. So, he said, shifting his weight. Nest Egg Financial, huh? And Artemis Ventures. You've been busy. I have. I always knew you had potential. I couldn't help it, I laughed. A genuine, spontaneous laugh that made heads turn in our direction.
Did you?
That's not how I remember it. His smile faltered. Look, Ellie. Elena, I corrected. Elena, he amended. People say things they don't mean during breakups. It was a difficult time for both of us. I raised an eyebrow. Was it difficult for you? You seemed quite certain about your decision. He had the grace to look embarrassed. I was young, stupid, focused on the wrong things. And now you're older and wiser? I asked, my voice neutral. I like to think so. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. You know, seeing you tonight, it's bringing back a lot of memories. I smiled thinly. Is it? Good memories, he clarified quickly. From before things got complicated. Remember that weekend in Monterey? The cottage on the beach? Or that Christmas at the ski lodge when we got snowed in? I remembered. I remembered everything, the good and the bad. The moments of genuine happiness that had made the eventual betrayal cut even deeper. Why are you doing this, Jason? Doing what? He asked innocently. This nostalgic reminiscing at your own engagement party. He glanced around to ensure no one was within earshot. I'm just surprised to see you. Surprised by how successful you've become. It's got me thinking about paths not taken. I almost admired his audacity. Almost. You look happy with Kira, I observed. She seems lovely. She is, he said quickly. Very sweet. Very supportive. I nodded toward where she stood across the rooftop, posing for pictures with friends. And quite beautiful. Yes. He hesitated. It's a good match. She has a strong social media presence, which helps my professional image. There it was, the calculating mind I remembered. Always evaluating relationships in terms of benefits and liabilities. And how does she feel about being a professional asset? I asked. He missed my sarcasm entirely. She understands the importance of appearances in our world. We're building a brand together. How romantic. He frowned slightly, then changed tactics. What about you? Anyone special in your life? My company keeps me busy. All work and no play? He smiled, stepping closer. You always did have incredible focus. It's one of the things I admired about you. I could smell his cologne now. Expensive, probably chosen to match his carefully cultivated image. I remembered a time when his nearness would have made my heart race. Now I felt nothing but a clinical curiosity. You know, he said, voice dropping to an intimate whisper, seeing you tonight, successful, confident. It makes me wonder if I made a mistake. A mistake? Ending things the way I did. Maybe we rushed things. His eyes held mine, the same look he'd used when trying to charm his way out of arguments. Maybe we were meant to find each other again like this. When we're both established. Equals now. I almost laughed. Equals? Did he really think a promotion to middle management at a company I now owned made us equals? What exactly are you suggesting, Jason? I asked, keeping my voice steady. You're celebrating your engagement tonight. He glanced toward Kira, who is now taking selfies with her bridesmaids. Things aren't always what they seem. Kira and I, we make sense on paper, but there's something missing. He reached for my hand, the connection we had. I moved my hand away before he could touch it, reaching instead into my clutch. Speaking of papers, I said, pulling out a business card. I have something for you. The card was simple, elegant, cream-colored stock with embossed lettering. Elena Harper, founder and CEO, Nest Egg Financial. Majority shareholder, Artemis Ventures. Jason took it, studying the text. Nice card, he said, still not fully comprehending. Turn it over, I instructed. On the back, I'd handwritten a single line. Effective tomorrow, all Vaultix executive promotions require my personal approval. I watched understanding dawn in his eyes, slowly at first, then in a rush that drained the color from his face. You're my boss, I supplied. Technically, I own the controlling interest in Voltix now. The board reports to me. He stared at the card, then at me, his mind visibly recalculating everything. My presence at the party, his promotion prospects, his future. Ellie, It's Miss Harper, professionally speaking, I corrected gently. His hand trembled slightly. This is about revenge, isn't it? For the breakup? I shook my head. This is about business, Jason. Voltix had promising technology, but poor leadership. It was a sound investment. But you specifically targeted my company. That can't be coincidence. I smiled. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in recognizing opportunities. Just as he'd recognized the opportunity to leave me when I no longer served his ambitions. What happens now? He asked, his voice hollow.
Now.
I glanced at my watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than his annual salary. Now I finish my champagne, congratulate you properly on your engagement, and leave you to your celebration. And tomorrow? At the office. Tomorrow, the board reviews all pending executive promotions. I took a sip of champagne. I suggest updating your resume. The look on his face, shock mingled with dawning horror, was payment for 1,000 sleepless nights after our breakup. Please, he whispered.
We need to talk about this. Privately.
Maybe dinner tomorrow? Over his shoulder, I noticed Kira watching us, her professional smile fading into a look of concern. I think your fiancé would prefer you focus on your engagement right now, I said. And I have a company to run. Actually, several companies. I raised my glass. Congratulations, Jason. I wish you both every happiness. His face was a study in disbelief as I walked away, leaving him holding my business card like a death sentence for the future he'd planned. I stayed exactly 45 minutes longer, enough time to network with several Voltix board members, compliment the venue to the hosts, and finish one glass of champagne. Professional, dignified, unmoved. As I prepared to leave, I stepped onto the quiet side balcony for a moment of solitude. The city stretched below, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined standing here, like this, wealthy, powerful, completely transformed from the girl who'd once cried on her apartment floor over a man who thought she was worthless. I hadn't expected the confrontation with Jason to leave me feeling so empty. Where was the satisfaction I'd anticipated? The vindication? The moment had played out perfectly. His shock, his desperate attempt to charm me, his ultimate realization that I now controlled his future. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt strangely hollow. There you are, Sophie said, joining me on the balcony. I've been looking everywhere. You just disappeared after talking to Jason. I needed a minute, I admitted. So?
How was it?
Did he grovel appropriately? Please tell me you fired him on the spot. I shook my head. Nothing so dramatic.
We talked.
He pretended he always believed in me, tried to suggest we were meant to find each other again. Sophie's eyes widened. At his own engagement party? What a snake. He hasn't changed, I said, looking out at the city. Still calculating. Still seeing people as assets or liabilities. Through the glass doors, I could see the party continuing inside. Jason and Kira were having what appeared to be an intense conversation in the corner. She was gesturing with her hands, face flushed. He kept shaking his head, reaching for her arm, which she pulled away. Trouble in paradise already, Sophie observed. News travels fast at parties like this. Indeed. By now, everyone knew. The nobody ex-girlfriend was now the somebody boss. The girl who wasn't good enough had become the woman who was untouchable. What did you say to him?
Sophie asked.
I told her about the business card, the handwritten note about promotions requiring my approval. She whistled low. Ice cold. I love it. But I wasn't feeling ice cold. I was feeling done. As if a chapter had finally closed, a book I'd been unable to put down for years suddenly finished. I thought this moment would feel different, I confessed. I've fantasized about it for so long, seeing his face when he realized who I'd become. But now that it's happened, not as satisfying as you hoped.
Sophie suggested.
Not exactly. It's more like I searched for the words. I don't need it anymore. Any of it. His recognition, his regret, his approval. Because you've moved beyond him, Sophie said softly. You're not that girl anymore. She was right. Somewhere along the way, between the sleepless nights coding, the investor meetings, the strategic decisions that built Nest Egg into what it was now, I'd stopped being the person Jason had broken. I'd become someone new. Someone who didn't need validation from a man who'd once discarded her. I'm not going to fire him, I decided aloud. Sophie looked surprised. You're not? After all he did? What would that prove? That I'm still holding on to the past? That he still has power over my decisions? I shook my head.
No.
I'll let his career rise or fall on its own merits. Just business, nothing personal. Inside, Kira had walked away from Jason, joining a group of friends who immediately closed ranks around her, casting disapproving glances in his direction. He stood alone, looking lost, the confident smile he'd worn all evening nowhere to be seen. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of something. Not quite pity, more like recognition. I remembered how it felt to have your carefully constructed world collapse around you. To suddenly see yourself through someone else's eyes and find the reflection wanting. Ready to go? Sophie asked, checking her watch. There's a great cocktail bar around the corner that just opened. We could get a nightcap. I nodded, taking one last look at the party. Jason glanced up then, his eyes finding mine through the glass. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Him, still in the crowded room. Me, already outside, already gone. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I simply turned and walked away. In the elevator down, Sophie nudged my shoulder. So, how does revenge taste? I considered the question carefully. Not like revenge at all, I said finally. More like freedom. From what? From needing him to see my worth. Outside, the night air was cool against my skin. A car was waiting to take us wherever we wanted to go next. I had meetings tomorrow, decisions to make, a company to run. My life, the one I'd built from nothing, the one that had nothing to do with Jason or what he thought of me. What will you do about Voltix? Sophie asked as we slid into the car. Integrate their security protocols into Nest Egg's platform. Modernize their infrastructure. Keep the talented staff. Let the rest go. Standard business strategy, no emotion involved. And Jason, I thought about it. His departmental review is next month. If his work is good, he'll stay. If not, I shrugged. The market is competitive. Sophie studied my face. You really have moved on, haven't you? I have, I said, surprised to realize how completely true it was. 3 years ago, I thought he'd broken me beyond repair. But he didn't break me. He just showed me who I really was. Someone who could lose everything and still rise. Someone who could build something from nothing but determination and a good idea. The car pulled away from the curb, the lights of the pinnacle receding behind us. I didn't look back. You know what's funny? I said. For years, I fantasized about this moment, about Jason discovering who I'd become, about making him regret walking away. I thought it would be the ultimate victory. And it wasn't. I shook my head. The victory wasn't tonight. It was every day I got up and kept going after he left. Every time I chose to believe in myself when no one else did. Every small success that led to bigger ones. The city rolled by outside the windows, full of light and life and possibility. The real victory, I said softly, was becoming someone who no longer needed Jason Morris to validate her worth. Sophie raised her water bottle in a toast, to the last laugh. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. To new beginnings.